I am doing just fine, and you know what? Speaking of New Year's, this is the first episode of The Incredible Hulk in the 1980s, so we're finally
Oh, really?
this is aired January 4th, 1980. So this was the new David episode. Okay. Okay, you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
Mr. McGee, don't make me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
You are about to listen to the Totally Super Awesome 80s Reboot Overdrive podcast.
This podcast is our fan tribute to the Incredible Hulk TV show. Be advised that has been exposed to radiation, and we caution to listen at your own risk. You have now entered GammaCast.
Hello and welcome to the GammaCast. I'm your host, Charlie, the Professor Esther, and with me as always is my skinny rich friend.
It's Mozz.
Hey, Mozz. Welcome back to the GammaCast. Broken Image. First aired January 4th, 1980. That's right, kids. We are now in the 80s here on the totally awesome 80s Reboot Overdrive. Talking about Incredible Hulk on the Hulk. This is actually the New Year's episode. We are actually recording this. This is our first recording of 2017. Sorry, new year, new us. David Bowman is mistaken for criminal Mike Cassidy, who promptly shaves off his mustache to take advantage of the situation. And written, of course, writers were this was directed by John McPherson, Karen Harris, another female writer, as well as Jill Donner is the writer on this. I believe Karen and Jill actually have written several other episodes for The Incredible Hulk. Jill actually wound up becoming a producer on this series. A great episode, although the entire time I'm watching it, I keep on thinking, meet David, who's lived most everywhere, from Honolulu to Old Times Square, but Mikey's only seen the sights a crook can see from Brooklyn Heights. What a crazy pair. But they're mobsters, identical mobsters all the way. This idea that you're going to find that perfect identical twin who is not related to you. To that extent, like Patty Duke, at least that was her cousin. And so, actually, the odds of actual identical cousins is actually not that astronomical, especially if, twins marry twins, That being identical cousins is actually almost very likely. But, not impossible. It's still odd. My favorite character in this, I have to say, is Teddy, who is the
henchman? The
henchman to Mike Cassidy. He actually does have a long and storied career here in the 80s, mostly playing, guys like Teddy. But hey, he's still around there. He's still working, and he actually comes back in another episode of the Hulk in 1981 called "Bring Me the Head of the Hulk." He plays up front.
Typecasting puts food on the table,
Yeah, well, he's working. He was an Elf. He was in Cagney and Lacey. He was in Night Court. He was in Quantum Leap. Then we're in the 90s, so we'll let that be. So our actual plot line here, we are opening up with, of course, David. Well, actually, we don't open up with David. David is...
Right, you think it's David.
No, and it looks like David because, hey, he's in bed with a beautiful woman. Has to be David Banner.
And my thought was we're finally get to see, that philandering side of David. And I'm like, yes, it brought me a lot of joy to know that he was enjoying his life to that extent out there while he was, hoboing it up. But you also see the mustache, and I thought to myself, finally, he's trying his hand at some semblance of a disguise. And I'm like, man, he's wising up. He's like, out there, and like the way he talks to that woman is just hilarious.
Yeah.
And then you find out, of course, it's a doppelganger. So.
Yeah. No, the mustache. He doesn't actually start doing stuff like. I think he grows a beard in one of the movies. I think he had a beard, and I'm sure there was always this debate about stuff like that because you do have that problem with the Hulk, which is if you have a mustache, does the Hulk then have a mustache? And they did not actually resolve that in the comic books until just recently, and it was recently resolved that yes. If you have a mustache, but the Hulk doesn't, you can have a mustache, but the Hulk cannot have a mustache. It does actually happen that, you can have one version, because the Hulk is, in the comic books, he's an expression of your inner self. So if your inner self doesn't have a mustache, the Hulk won't have a mustache. But the Hulk might have a beard if the Hulk has a beard. It's like, it's weird. But, although it might have been kind of cool seeing, the Hulk with a stash.
Yeah.
So, but we open up with Mike, and it's really Mike's story for most of the part, and then it just so happens that Teddy is going at the Flophouse Hotel and runs into David Bowman, quote unquote. Who is sweeping floors and, making his way as a hobo do, As the song King of the Road says, 12 hours pushing brooms buys a 4x8 foot room, and that's what he had. And he had his 4x8 foot room and he pushed the broom, and that was the life of David on the road. He was the king of the road, as they say. Moving beyond that, so they meet, they run into each other, and they basically says, hey, Mike, you got a doppelganger, and then Mike's wheels start turning, and comes up with a pretty diabolical plan.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny to think about that this was all over just $100,000, first of all.
Yeah, well, this is 100,000 1980s money.
Yeah, but I checked the inflation calculator, and it would only be $300,000.
Yeah.
So still, but it's interesting.
Yeah, Mozz, do you have $300,000?
No.
I don't have $300,000 either, so it's...
Well, that's fair.
Honestly, $300,000 right now, that's gonna... that means I'm not working for the next 3 years at least, It's enough to start a new life,
I guess. But, he seemed like he was a criminal by trade, that he'd been doing this for a while, and, I guess every score is a score, maybe.
Yeah. No, I agree, yeah. And again, I was a little shocked by the low amount, too, I'll be honest with you. Especially since it does seem like he is just tossing away his old life here.
Right.
But then again, also just very flippantly just gives away half of it. So really, we're only looking at $50,000.
Well, did he really? Do you think he intended to actually do that?
Well, that's what he seemed to say when we're breaking everything down. But okay, so we and just to trace it back. I think it's important not to get too wound up on the money because I think that is meant as something of a MacGuffin. And
I see. Yeah.
It was a significant amount in the day. $300,000. That's a lot of money, especially that's $300,000 no taxes.
Right.
It's $300,000 cash out the door. That's a good amount of money.
Maybe it had more to do with the fact that he wanted to break away from his partner.
Yeah.
The guy who's sleeping with his lady.
Yeah, Steve. So
I think that was a strong motivator too, which is what makes me think it's interesting that he'd be at the end willing to just give away the $50,000.
Yeah. Well,
or maybe that was just me in my head thinking like that, couldn't possibly be true. Maybe he's planning to kill him once he's, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, the idea was that if they recover the $50,000, they're not gonna look for their other 50. And then, and for what it's worth, David might have lots of other money hidden out. I mean, he may need to be rolling not because he now has this big lump of money, but because maybe the heat has just gotten too much. And not David, Mike,
Right. Seems a very even-tempered decision to make.
Yeah. Well, even though he does have a temper, as Lorraine says, we never really see his temper in this. We see,
That's true.
Although I did love and of course we get this great scene where Lorraine basically is told to go to the flop house where she's expecting to meet Mike, and there she meets David, and of course she just says, "Oh, Mike," and starts kissing upon him, and David is not in any rush to disabuse her of this.
Well, I would not. Who would?
Yeah, well, fair enough. It's like, okay. He is a gentleman by the end of it. He does say, "But look, I do have to tell you, I'm not the guy you think I am. I'm actually David," which is confusing to her.
Right, she doesn't believe it off the bat.
No, and of course that leads to Steve picking up David, as he is wont to do, because he wants the $100,000 back, and he is going to deal with Mr. Cassidy, who is now pretending to be David in his mind, and for what it's worth, Lorraine does say, I don't think this is David, or I don't think this is Mike. I think he's being honest with us. But of course, Steve dismisses that because, hey, what are the odds that someone looks exactly like Mike Cassidy just happens to be here? Although,
absolutely, that is the only logical decision to make in that moment. Yeah. She's trying to protect him and get out of my way.
Although, for what it's worth, what we do get later is that he doesn't look exactly like Mike Cassidy. Mike Cassidy is about 10 years older. Mike Cassidy has the gray hair. Mike Cassidy has the stash. Mike Cassidy has been through more, But I guess he looks enough like him that people aren't questioning it.
Right.
Was
Just for Men invented then?
I'm sorry?
Was Just for Men invented yet?
Oh, yeah. They've had hair dye since the days of Jesus and Muhammad.
Okay, fair enough. They've had hair dye
for, to the extent that actually I think there were actually prescriptions about it in various religious tomes. I know.
Wow.
Yeah, I know that there's something about I know in Islam you can only dye your hair as a man if you're going to war. That's like a big deal that you can only.
What?
Yeah. Well, because the idea is that if you needed to let people know that you were ready, that you were virile and strong, and you weren't, it was okay to do it then. This is just some random bit of trivia that I've picked up over the centuries. But
no, that's a really good little bit of trivia, though.
Yeah, because I remember there was a big deal about Osama bin Laden had started towards the end he started dyeing his beard, and there was this sort of explanation why he's dyeing his beard now is because because he's gearing up for more war, but really it was really in its own way it was kind of a false bravado because he wasn't in any position to really do it. So as we So, of course, Steve's men start roughing up David in the back room.
Yeah.
And, of course, the one guy makes a point after he's punched him good and hard. He says, well, now I will turn away and walk away. Because it's important, of course, that David have privacy for these moments.
Right. He's a shy Hulk.
He is a shy Hulk. He's a very shy Hulk. And he hulks out. And this scares the heck out of Steve and his men. And, of course, in their attempt to escape, they wind up driving backwards over the severe tire damage spikes, blow out their wheels, and then that's kind of it. They
kind of run off.
Yeah, they run off because what are you going to do? And the Hulk has had his moment of rage at them.
Destruction.
And then he wanders off, and we meet Chumley and her owner, who also live in David's building, because the Hulk is going home. Again, this nice bit about the Hulk and David having this coincided mentality, that when the Hulk is looking for where to go, he goes home. He goes back to the hotel where he knows he lives. And of course the dog comes off, and we get some funny fast motion as the dog runs away from the Hulk. And
right. But what did you think was going on there? Because I found this really interesting, because they really offered no explanation of it at all when he goes and takes the curler out of the old woman's hair and like thoughtfully looks at it. Like, what is he thinking about? And then he just says okay, and then just wanders off.
Well,
like, what do you think?
I mean, part of me was waiting for him to bite it, which is a common gag they'll do with stuff like that,
Uh-huh.
I think he was just curious, I think sometimes they have I think sometimes that's Lou doing improv, I think he's coming in there in his character, and I think he's, thinking if the Hulk comes to this, what does the Hulk think of this woman with these weird pink things in her hair? And what's he going to do? And he's, and Hulk is, in many ways kind of childlike. And like a child would, if you walked up to a girl, if you had like a toddler and you had curlers in your hair, they would probably grab your curls. They was like, what is that? Why do you have this stuff in your hair? So, you know, I mean,
that's really cool. I really have a lot of respect for that. That's really, really cool.
Yeah. No, and I would honestly say, I would wager that was probably not in the script. I would wager that's something that Lou just in the moment felt that he should do. Have no guarantee of that, but I could definitely see that. And that of course leads us to Jack McGee, because Jack McGee does show up, and of course at the garage. Now, of course, it should be noted that this is a garage that's owned by by Steve.
Right.
So the guy is saying, "I don't see nothing. I know nothing. I see nothing."
Yeah.
There's a lot of weirdos in this town. At a certain point, you just don't notice them.
Yeah.
7-foot green hulking monster. Just didn't see him. Don't know what it was about. Don't care. Not my job. And of course, then as he is going on, Jack again working into this idea that maybe Jack actually is a decent reporter. He actually does trace it back to this hotel, and goes there and meets Erica Yan, our woman with a dog, she is listed as, and she offers Jack a little bit of consolation, and Jack is not of interest.
Yeah, it almost seemed like she wanted that from the Hulk too, a little bit.
Yeah, well, he is a pretty hunky guy, and and quite frankly, it seems like her character was a little hot
pretty
to trot.
lonely.
She definitely was a woman looking for that companionship.
Right.
And then of course we get finally a moment where David does not look away as Jack opens, or as that David opens the door as Jack is not looking away. For once, Jack actually thinks to look at the door he's waiting to open. And we get what is almost...
It was a pretty epic moment. It's like this moment that you've been waiting the whole series to sort of happen, and they're finally face to face with each other. Nobody knows what to do at first. They're saying, I can't believe I got here.
Well, yeah, but I love that he immediately recognizes that it's David Banner. And, I gotta wonder, after this moment, and because I haven't watched what happens next, I gotta wonder if he's going to come back to this idea that David Banner might still be alive. Because, I mean, really, he's met this guy who looks exactly like David Banner. He knows the Hulk was in the area. He knows the Hulk had wound up at David's parents' house a few episodes ago. I mean, I think it's likely that that Jack may start putting some pieces together on this.
Right.
I don't know if he's going to, but I think it's very reasonable to think that he might be very soon. That might come up. And like I said, I did watch the next episode. It doesn't really get a mention. I think I watched because I think the next one is a very Jack McGee centric episode, but he's not really the next one or the one after it, because I actually watched a few ahead. Back when Netflix still had the Hulk on, and now Netflix has dropped the Hulk. It's weird because Netflix has added to all these other Marvel things. We now have Civil War on there, but no Hulk. Yeah. So it's like, what the what now? I'm writing them a nasty letter saying bring us the Hulk, Gotta see if Hulu has it,
That'd be cool.
That would be cool. I gotta find it, For the time being, it is still on MeTV, so I can always watch it and record it off of MeTV.
Right.
But then I can't podcast about it before it comes. So right now we're like one episode ahead because we kind of took Christmas off. But I
think we're in a good place. And if you're so inclined, you can go out and torrent these episodes or these seasons.
Yeah. Or I could just buy them on DVD.
That's also true.
Because they are all on DVD, and then maybe I can actually even pick up the movies, which we have Daredevil and Thor and Black Widow in the last one.
Oh.
Yeah, I wasn't even aware that was supposed to be Black Widow, but that was something when I was reading up in the third in the Hulk movie. He meets a Russian spy who isn't called Black Widow or Natasha Romanoff. But it's kind of implied that was sort of like the character they were introducing there.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Anyway, moving right along. So after Jack McGee confronts David basically, because now David knows there's a mobster in town who looks exactly like him, decides to put on the Mike Cassidy character.
Yeah.
And throws down with him, and basically tells him, I'll cut you, McGee.
Because if you don't disappear, my friend here is gonna break both of your legs. Yeah. You hear me?
And then of course, Teddy shows up to corroborate the argument, to corroborate the story, and so that works nicely out for David. And then Teddy basically tells him, hey, look. Mike feels awful that you got pulled up into this. He wants to make it up to you. Which should be a big red flag right there. And he, basically, and this is where we get to this idea that Mike is going to give him half the money. Although he doesn't tell him that. He's going to. Ted just tells him, he'll give you. Whatever you need, he'll take you to the bus station, he'll give you some money, he'll give you a ticket anywhere you want to go,
Right.
Basically trying to make it nice for him.
Right.
In fact,
I've got to say here, though, the series and a lot of shows are filled with henchmen that are just, not good at their jobs. This guy is pretty decent at his job. He did everything right and followed all his orders and got things taken care of. I was very impressed by him.
Yeah, well,
as a henchman.
I think that's probably really the norm in reality for henchmen. I think the vast majority of henchmen probably are henching professionally at that professional henching level. I think that there's, you may get a few that are kind of, the guys whose dad was a henchman, so he's like now a henchman. Didn't really earn their place. But Teddy, he's definitely a guy who's henched his way up to be Mike's right-hand man. And, for what it's worth, we see, he takes his cut, he gets his extra thing, and quite frankly, when you think about it, it's a real low-risk thing for Teddy, Because it's like, because basically one of two things is going to happen, which is that Mike's, that David's going to die, and everyone's going to think that was Mike who's dead, and, no one's going to come after Teddy then, or they're going to realize that, Mike, that David isn't Mike, and then, but then Teddy's already in the wind, or Mike's already in the wind, and, what does Teddy care?
Yeah.
So yeah, Teddy definitely comes off well, and he does do his job well. And of course, that gets David to the site of the new construction for where Steve is building, I guess, his latest parking garage, and decides to put Mike Cassidy into the foundation. And, what was kind of weird in that is this whole thing about, we're going to put the plastic over you so you have air bubbles.
Yeah. That's just because Lou didn't want to get cement on him.
I guess so, but, I mean, he's going to get cement on him anyway because he has to burst through.
Right.
It was to me, it was kind of a weird thing, the way they set it up.
Yeah, yeah.
But, I'll go along with it. It just... Honestly, that might have even been that actor, John Reilly, just throwing some lines in there because he wanted to explain what they were doing. Because I don't even think it's actually that weird to put down plastic underneath a concrete foundation. I don't know if you would just throw a Mylar sheet down like that, but I don't think it's unheard of.
Right.
Because it's to prevent, water seepage and things like that. I don't know. I don't know. But anyway, so of course they cover David with concrete, and then out of the concrete hole bursts a Hulk. Where did he come from? Nobody knows. And in the whole mess, of course, Mike Cassidy does get arrested.
Yeah.
Because basically, the Hulk, is there, and he makes sure the cops get their man, I guess.
And then he runs off.
Yeah, and then he runs off, and then we get this nice scene with Jack at the police station, looking at Mike Cassidy and saying he doesn't look like the guy I saw.
Right.
And to me, I think, and again, this is this thing that I come to is like, is there something deeper going on here? Because, and he explains, this guy's clearly older. The guy I saw, he was younger, and he carried himself differently. This guy doesn't look like the guy I saw. And, I really like that. And like I said, I hope this is something that comes out later, that this is something that builds out in the story. When we get to this later episode, I can't remember what it was called. I think it was called Proof or something like that. With the Hulk, you do see that one of Jack's big things is as I've always said, being able to prove things. He doesn't like to print anything that he can't prove is what's going on, and so.
There's an interesting mention with the old lady with the dog. Did she mention something about the $6 million man to him?
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, hey, we printed it. It must be true.
Yeah, well, but that was that's an interesting question, and this is, and to me, that is like one of those big things for me, because, I do have this idea in my mind of the McGee files, and, right now, the $6 Million Man has a book out, Wonder Woman 66 has a book, or Wonder Woman 70... Was it Wonder Woman 70? I think it's 78 out, has a book. And then, of course, there's Batman 66 out. And it makes me wonder if, I really think Marvel needs to make an Incredible Hulk 1978 book where they're going to tie the Hulk into all these other characters from these, the BTV Marvel universe, because I really love these things. I think they have this great nostalgia value, and it would be great if they could
really
do a crossover with IDW where there's the $6 Million Man and the Bionic Woman meeting the Hulk,
And I mean, they would have like an endless supply. Do you think they would go based off of the old series? That would be really fun for people who watched it when they were younger.
Well, exactly. I mean, nostalgia is a big market for comics. You don't have to make a big imprint. You make a small imprint of these books. And I think that, honestly, I think if anything, I think maybe Marvel avoids it just because they don't want to be that niche kind of producer. But honestly, I love the Hulk so much, and I really think that there is such. Like I've said, I really think that there is actually this greatness here that Marvel needs to exploit more. You know.
Well, see, now there's a letter worth writing.
Yeah. Oh, I've written it to him. I've mentioned it to him. I will definitely do more.
Yeah, let's start a petition. Let's get the McGee files printed.
Yes, exactly. Any final thoughts on this episode, Mozz?
I really enjoyed it because I thought that Bill Bixby as an actor got to have a lot of fun in this episode. He got to play like a character he doesn't get to play normally, this hard exterior kind of guy. And I think my favorite scene in the whole episode was this flashback scene between him and what was the lead actress character's name?
Lorraine was played by Karen Carlson.
Lorraine.
Yeah.
And he's sitting there reading a book, and she comes to try to talk to him, and he's so flippant and so like arrogant with her, and he says, "Why don't you stop wasting your limited intelligence trying to figure me out and go take a good hard look at yourself? You're with me because I am mean, because I don't care, and I'm not going to change." And then he says, "You don't want me to. You're a born victim." And then she hugs him. Yeah. And it's such like an incredibly deep scene that you don't expect in sort of like, a pretty silly story. But it spoke to a lot about how these relationships come to happen, where people don't know who they really are, what they don't really need, but somehow they gravitate towards that thing that they want. Maybe it's not healthy for them, but I thought it was a really, really interesting scene. Yeah. And that relationship between the woman and the two of them was a really interesting arc, too, of what her mentality was throughout this whole thing. I thought that was really, really interesting.
Nice. Yeah, she was very... this was a good episode. This was a great... And I've always said that, the Hulk, we get some great actors in here.
Yeah.
We get some great stories. It's really just a top-notch series. It's understandable why it got to be really so iconic at the time and continues to be something that people love to watch today.
Yeah, and I always get a sense of like when I was in high school or in college in drama club, this is the type of stuff I would have enjoyed putting on like a little thing about, because it really seemed like this episode was made for actors to have fun.
I would love to see a high school production of Broken Image.
Oh, God.
Because I just want to see who they get to play the Hulk.
And how they would, go about convincing the audience, hey, these two kids don't look alike, but we're going to pretend that they look alike, okay?
I just get the same kid. Well, I guess there is that one scene where they do meet, so yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, okay, so Mozz, if people wanted to reach out to you, talk to you about how great you are on these shows, this and the CageCast, how can they reach you?
Oh, they can send me an email at mozzmanzor@gmail.com. It's MOZZMANZOOR.
Mm-hmm. And, of course, you can always write to me at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, @gmail.com. And, of course, follow me on the Twitters as I do live tweet The Incredible Hulk, 7 o'clock on Saturdays on MeTV when I can, which I haven't been able the last 2 holiday weeks, but I will get back to it, probably starting with the previous episode, where they were trapped in the mall, and then this episode later, and then and then figuring out what we have to do. We may wind up having to just watch the show on MeTV and then podcast about it later. We'll have to see. So you can follow me on Twitter at CharlieEsser. That's CharlieEsser. Look for the 2 E's in middle for quality. Okay, Mozz, always great to have you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight on the GammaCast. Please Hulk out with us again next week. Good night.
We hope you've enjoyed this show. This podcast is part of the 80s Reboot Overdrive channel on Southgate Media Group. You can follow us on Facebook on the 80s Reboot group page. We're also on Twitter and Tumblr at 80s Reboot. We invite you to check out all the wonderful podcasts and blogs available at southgatemediagroup.com. And thank you for reliving the 80s.